We got no Thursday night football this week, Tyson, so we're going to do the two-gamer classic slate for Saturday. Got Steelers and the Ravens, Texans and Colts. I think this is the first time we've seen Texans in prime time. Is that right?
It has been, man. What you sent me a link saying like this is the only game all year that they didn't start 1 p.m. Eastern like day, because look, dude, going into the season at the in preseason, looking at these two teams, who would have thought that week 18 both of these teams have a shot to make the playoffs? Both rookie quarterbacks, and especially after Anthony Richardson went down, we thought the season was probably over for the Colts and all the Jonathan Taylor drama. Well, we got a good one here, man. There's three teams who absolutely need to win. The Ravens, we'll have to talk about what their motivation is here coming up. Let's do it. What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by Ellie Hernandez. Ellie, Happy New Year, man. We have reached 2024. We've reached week 18 of the football season, dude. This is crazy, man. It flew by. We've got a lot of playoff implications here. Playoffs. So, like, you and I both have been kind of scouring the internet for all of these motivations that these teams have, that individual players have, as well as all these playoff scenarios. And I think the NFL did a pretty good job with the scheduling. This Texans and Colts game should be a really good one. We are going to do a Showdown Slate specific video for Texans and Colts. That'll be for the members, the YouTube members only. So if you guys want to support the channel and you guys want to get a video a week specifically for you guys, hit that join button down below. It's only $3.99 a month and it really helps us out. Let's get into this, dude. Let's get into this matchup here, both of these matchups. So let's start with this first game, Steelers and Ravens. Now, we know Lamar Jackson's not playing, right? So the motivations here for the Ravens are just stay healthy at this point. The Steelers are going into Baltimore, and there's some weather to talk about here. We could see some massive amounts of rain or snow, lots of wind, something we need to monitor as we get closer. We're recording this on Thursday around 12:30 Pacific. So, obviously weather can change, but from yesterday when I was checking it till now, it's gotten even worse. As far as it looks like there's about a 50% chance of snow or rain right at kickoff, and it just gets worse as the night goes on. So we'll have to see if that shifts. If that shifts earlier, we could see snow right off the bat. And that's kind of a big deal in a game like this. Steelers are favored on the road. They're 3.5-point favorites simply because we know the Ravens are probably not going to play most of their starters. Now, they're going to have to play some starters. You can't just put out an entire team of backups. So we'll have to kind of talk about who we think has a chance here to actually see some run. It's probably going to be like, no Zay Flowers, probably not going to see much Odell. Maybe we see a drive out of these guys. There's the whole narrative behind the Ravens at this point is this is similar to 2019 when Lamar won the MVP. They rested their guys. They had a bye week, and they came out flat and got beat up by Derrick Henry and the Titans. Now, I think this is a better team. This is a different sort of situation, but it's worth mentioning because we got to figure out kind of what the motivations for these starters are in this game. We'll probably see a lot of Melvin Gordon. We'll probably see a lot of Nelson Aguilar, Tylan Wallace, even Laquan Treadwell might get some run here. Do we see anybody else? That's the biggest question. Now, Pittsburgh, this is a playoff game for them. Like, if they win, they're not officially in. They're going to need potentially some more help here. They basically need to win and a loss by either Jacksonville or Buffalo, or a Jacksonville loss plus a Denver win. There's a lot of different situations here. At the end of the day, Pittsburgh needs to win this game. Now, if you're the Ravens, do you want to see your rival? These teams hate each other, dude. Tomlin versus Harbaugh. This has been the regime for many years. These teams hate each other. You and I, we got to work on with Terrell Suggs on a film way in the back in the day, and we know Terrell Suggs hates the Steelers. Like, these guys just absolutely hate each other. But are you going to risk your season by playing any of your guys just to win kind of a meaningless game for you? Probably not. But if you're Baltimore, you can knock the Steelers out of the playoffs, which would be sweet. So, if they can come out and have a good game and have a chance to win this game, they're definitely going to try. What are your thoughts on this matchup, dude? Like, what can we expect? Mason Rudolph is getting the start again. Pickens and him have been absolutely crushing. We've seen the run game for the Steelers absolutely crush. And in a weather game, we're probably going to want to focus on getting to a lot of these running backs in this game and probably some of the defenses. The total is 36.5. It probably is going to drop even more if this weather gets worse, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a MAGA joke in here somewhere, right? Mason Rudolph starting somehow on January 6th. But anyways, we'll just move past that. Look, this is going to be an interesting one. This is an important game, man. I so there's a lot we can talk about incentives, right? And these are two teams where I think like they're both motivated by beating the shit out of each other. The AFC is just like, I don't know, maybe I've always just had this impression of the AFC, but like in even what is the AFC North, like I expect them to kind of come out and try and whoop each other's ass. Uh all that said and done, right? Like I do think that Harbaugh is going to try and do things a little bit differently this year. They don't want to come out flat and have what happened to them against the Titans happen again. And I don't want to get too caught up in that game because I believe that they lost that game because nobody could catch a fucking football. Lamar had 350 passing yards and 150 rushing yards. So like we're not gonna get hung up on that. Look, I think they're gonna take it easy here. I think Pittsburgh is gonna win this game. But I think it's gonna be low scoring, man. I don't know if it's gonna be as I don't think the Steelers offense is going to click as much as it has the past couple of weeks. I know they looked good last week when Najee had two rushing touchdowns. Like I didn't ever fucking think we'd see that again. But I don't know that they're going to have the same kind of success against the Ravens defense in Baltimore. I think they win. It's probably like a 13-10 type of game, but it's just I don't know, man. Like I don't have much faith that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to come put out 35 points in this defense.
Yeah, that's the hard thing is I think we all realize that the Texans and Colts, for fantasy purposes, is a better matchup to stack. Like game stacking the shit out of that game is going to be incredibly popular. Everybody's going to have Stroud. Everybody's going to have Minshew. But you could get a 10% owned Huntley, a Pro Bowl Tyler Huntley, who could run the ball and he's relatively priced. You could get a very low owned Mason Rudolph, who all it takes is a 10-yard slant pass to George Pickens and there's a touchdown sort of a situation. So I think we're going to have to get smart with this game. We're going to have to pick pieces. But if I'm doing 150 lineups or something, or even if I'm doing a 20 max, getting to one or two game stacks of this game is probably necessary if you want to cover yourself just in case we see something weird happen. Maybe the weather lets up. Maybe this game turns into Steelers putting up 30 points on a really unmotivated Baltimore Ravens team who, at this point, are we going to see Kyle Hamilton? Are we going to see any of these guys who are on the fringe of being injured on defense? Probably not. So this is a better opportunity for the Pittsburgh Steelers to put up points. They put up 30-plus points in back-to-back games with Mason Rudolph. The run game has looked good. They've gotten smarter. They've found ways to get guys open. It's just, to me, it feels like it's a necessary evil to probably try to game stack this game a little bit, not too much. Anything else, dude? Like, there's not a whole lot of motivation as far as player motivation. Looks like Najee Harris can hit 1,000 yards this week. I think he needs like 70 something yards to get there. Not really moving the needle to me.
That is a good opportunity to plug our Discord though. So this little screenshot about Najee Harris, and you'll see this come up throughout. Our buddy Tron put a nice little write up for the team incentives as well as the individual incentives that you can access inside of our Discord. It's really, again, just a bunch of teamwork where he's collaborating with other people and just consolidating information down into one spreadsheet so it's easier to use. Again, hop in the Discord. We got all this information there, guys. We try and make it easier for you to build your lineups there.
And it's important too to be in there because as inactives come out for this game, it's going to change a lot. If certain players are active that we weren't expecting, like certain skill players, like let's say Likely, if Isaiah Likely is active in this game, maybe we see a drive or two out of him. With him and Huntley, maybe dude scores a touchdown. It's with big GPPs and tons of entries. if we could find any little edges, that's probably the place you guys want to jump into, is that Discord. Anything else to talk about with this game here? Anything else jump out to you? Like, the one thing I will say here is, if you're the Ravens, you do not want to see Pittsburgh win this game, make the playoffs, with a chance for them to upset a team on the road because they're hot, and then now they got to come into Baltimore to play you in the divisional round after having like a week off. Like, you do not want to see the Steelers with what, 4 or 5 straight wins coming back and playing you at home. That's not something you want to see. Let's move over to this other game here. So, like I said, this is the game we're going to want to target here. No weather to deal with. It's a 47.5 point total. Houston has Stroud back. The Colts are looking pretty decent. They actually are pretty damn healthy at this point. They've got Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss, both healthy for one of the first times that I can remember this season. So they're looking pretty good, man. And this Houston defense, while they grade out pretty good, they grade out as like a top 10 defense. We all saw the Amari Cooper game. We know that they can give up some pass yards on occasion. So what are your thoughts on this game, dude? The Texans are favored on the road. It seems to me like if I had to pick one team here and pick one narrative, is Stroud is a future potential MVP type guy. And this is a perfect opportunity. I know he's a rookie, but Minshew is a journeyman backup. He's a good backup. But I think that Stroud can put this team on his back and absolutely win this game. Thoughts on this matchup overall? And this is definitely a game fantasy-wise we're going to have to target.
Yeah, man. So I wish my victory lapping here would have resulted in some winnings in best ball this season. But we talked about it at the beginning of the year. I think people were massively undervaluing how good the Texans were able to be this year. And look at this: we're at the end of the season. We're looking at a playoff berth, right? So look, man, I think that this is a team that probably ends up winning this game. I agree with your sentiment. Gardner Minshew, he's been fun. The team's been doing well. The Colts have been doing well, and I'm kind of surprised that they made it as far as they did. But I don't know that they're going to be able to finish this out. Regardless, like, whoever wins this game is pretty much locked into the 7 seed. So what they end up playing Miami. So it's just an uphill battle for whoever ends up in the seeding, anyways. Now, obviously, we just discussed it. Pittsburgh can end up in that 7th seed as well. But these are the 2 teams that are probably more likely. That said, man, like I think the obvious thing that we need to get out of the way here is you, me, my grandma, your grandparents, they're all going to be playing Houston and Indiana, right? Everyone's stacking this game. It's so obvious. So
yeah,
like, I do think that there are weird ways we can get different. Like, the Colts defense has a couple touchdowns on the season. They have a couple games. I think it was like week 14 or some shit. They gave up like 30 points and had two defensive touchdowns. So like, there's still ways to get there. These are still very young teams. The Houston Texans is a young team, right? They're going to have the opportunity for turnovers and just brain farts, just shitty plays that allow for the Colts to get involved. And I think you can overstack this game. Instead of stopping it like a 2-1, 2-2, fucking run a 4-3, run a 5-3. I don't give a shit, and then put the Steelers defense in. So I think you can overstack this game as a way to get different, and we'll try all that shit when we get to building.
You're right, because naturally, like, playing the shit out of this game and then only getting like the defense and maybe one other skill player from the first game might seem uncomfortable. But like, that is a way to get different. Instead of just grabbing all the studs, like, just massively stack the shit out of this game. I think that's one way we could approach this if we wanted to just not dupe with everybody. Because remember, this is a 2-game slate. We got no Lamar. All the ownership's going to be pretty concentrated here. We're looking at offensive linemen here, dude. Colts, looking pretty good. They're ranked 4th according to PFF. And you look at the Houston Texans offensive line, they're struggling slightly. That's mainly because Laramie Tunsil got hurt. We don't know. He's questionable. We don't know if he's going to play. But you got a pretty interesting matchup here also when it comes to Pittman versus Stingley Jr. And Nico Collins looks to be in a really good spot against this Colts defense. The Colts defense is going to give up pass yards. They're going to run a lot of zone. They're running about 70% zone, which is the 4th highest in the league. And Stroud is the 2nd best QBR versus zone coverage. This feels like a situation where Stroud can absolutely come out and throw for 300 yards. It's all about the red zone. When when that red zone, that red area gets compressed and they're playing zone, it makes it a little bit more difficult to punch it in. I think Stroud's completion percentage of this year in the red zone is like 50% or actually like 45%. So that's something to note. One way to stop these guys is to shut them down in the red zone, but that's easier said than done. But look, we got some injuries to talk about for Houston that we'll get to here in a second. I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here, but I'm glad you mentioned this Indianapolis Colts defense here. They're 5th in sacks this year. So they've been surprisingly good up front, and that could cause some issues for Stroud here. Anything else to talk about here? Or do you want to jump into injuries?
Yeah, I think we're good, man.
All right, let's jump into injuries here.
Yeah, just pain. It was pain everywhere.
So in this first game here, look, this is a big question mark about the Ravens. We don't know who's going to be active. I feel like top-end guys on the offense will probably be inactive. I don't know if this team is deep enough with Keaton Mitchell being out for Gus Edwards to be inactive. Maybe he gets a drive and then sits, and then we see a lot of Melvin Gordon. Maybe you see somebody from the practice squad brought up. It's important to pay attention to these inactives as we get closer to this game. But when it comes to injuries, from the Steelers side, looks like we're going to get Minkah Fitzpatrick in. Najee Harris was a DNP on Wednesday. I don't know how serious that is. I don't know if that's just a veteran rest type thing. TJ Watt was limited. That's more of a veteran rest type thing. I don't think there's really a whole lot to talk about here. We just don't have enough information to start worrying about any of these guys at this point. Anything jump out to you here from this first game?
Nothing crazy. Again, like, it's just an opportunity to plug the Discord. We need to be treating this game specifically like it's a preseason game for the Ravens. We may not have any real strong takes outside of the quarterback and a wide receiver and running back here and there, like, until we find out who's active and inactive. They could just decide to sit all their skill players and run randoms from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to this other game here. So we have a little bit more to talk about here from this game. So the biggest news to me is these wide receivers for the Texans. You got Robert Woods potentially. He looks to be questionable. He's a DNP 2 straight practices. We'll have to see what happens Thursday evening as we're recording this around noon. Let's kind of see what happens. Maybe we see Robert Woods limited, and as well as Noah Brown is a DNP right now too. So if both of those guys are out, man, we're gonna have to rely on Mechie. We're gonna have to rely on what's his name, Xavier Hutchinson, I believe. There's some other guys that value opens up, which is would be kind of interesting as far as getting different and stacking the shit out of this game. But most likely, Nico Collins is going to be the guy we're going to want to get a hold of, with Tank Dell being out for the season. How long? What did he do? Did he tear his ACL, or was that an Achilles injury? Anyways,
I don't know. It was pretty serious, though. He'll be out for a while.
Yeah, he's gonna be out. He's obviously gonna be out the whole season, but it's gonna open up some salary here potentially if Noah Brown, Woods is out. You got Laramie Tunsil, obviously gonna be questionable. On the other side, looks like Zach Moss is gonna be healthy in this game, so we got a nice 1-2 punch. It's still gonna be a Jonathan Taylor type game, but instead of seeing other dudes pop up here, we might see a little bit of Zach Moss. That's the interesting. Ryan Kelly is a DNP, their center. Quentin Nelson was limited in practice. We got to keep an eye on all these inactives. What jumps out to you here? And what are we thinking when it comes to these Texans pass catchers if they're out?
I mean, as far as the Texans pass catchers, listen, man, I don't think anybody's going to be out. If there are, then I think we open up a little bit of value. Maybe John Mechie finally gets some run. It's been 2 years. But I don't know. I think the primary things we need to be looking at, Will Anderson, if he sits, that's a pretty big loss for the Houston defense. So I think it does give a little bit of a bump to Gardner Minshew and the offense over there. And then the other stuff, right? Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly. I'm sure they're going to play. This is probably the most important game. These are two pretty young teams, man, for the most part. Like, this is the most important game any of them played. So I expect most of them to play. But again, hop in that Discord, because if you're missing your starting center and your starting guard, like that really impacts your fucking performance.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Let's get into this breakdown. Break it down. So CJ Stroud is 7,300, Gardner Minshew 59, Mason Rudolph 54, and Tyler Huntley 57. Now, to me, I'd rather play Mason Rudolph over Tyler Huntley, but if this turns into a massive snow weather game with a bunch of rain and wind, Huntley, as a guy who can run the ball, we've seen him be successful. I know we joke around about the fact that he's a Pro Bowler, but he's a competent backup. They also do have Cunningham. They signed Malik Cunningham. It's probably a situation where he's backing up, and I'm not interested in getting to any of him, obviously, because they're not going to just bench Tyler Huntley at halftime. I mean, maybe. What are your thoughts on Tyler Huntley in this game? He's 5,700. I'd rather just pay up $200 to get to Gardner Minshew. I think everybody and their brother will be doing that. I mean, the only reason why we'd play Tyler Huntley is if we're trying to get massive leverage, and maybe you go with Tyler Huntley, Melvin Gordon, like almost naked stack, or something strange like that, and then you just stack the shit out of these other games. But I just don't think it's necessary. Do you agree?
Yeah, I don't know if you necessarily need to go to Tyler Huntley, but at 5,700, I also think that his ownership will probably be under 10% on a 2-game slate, like especially in a 150 max. I don't think you can kind of sleep on that. Look, Tyler Huntley, I think if you're going to play him, he's probably a guy probably you only want to stack with one other person, one pass catcher. Maybe you throw in Melvin Gordon, and that's fine. But I think you're also fine at considering him naked, right? Like if you wanted to be real weird and go like Tyler Huntley, somebody from the Steelers, and then the Steelers defense, I don't hate that either, because Tyler Huntley could have all the scoring for the offense with one rushing touchdown and 100 yards rushing or whatever it is. And then real quick on Malik Cunningham, he also is listed as a wide receiver. So if we see for whatever reason that they're not going to run Zay Flowers, Odell, or Rashad, maybe they do run a little bit of Malik at wide receiver, like he was running the Patriots. But I don't want to. I want to say that too much.
And that's more of a showdown type thing, because he is listed as a quarterback, and you can only play one quarterback. So,
my bad.
No, but for sure, it's worth mentioning if you're playing him in showdown. I don't hate getting to a little bit of him, because you just never know. They haven't really suited him up and put him on the field this year since they got him from the Patriots. CJ Stroud is 7,300. There's a big drop off here from him to Gardner Minshew. Do you think that $1,400 difference is really? Do you think that's really worth it? I do. I mean, you're going to have to play a shitload of CJ Stroud, but are you interested in maybe getting to more Gardner Minshew at a lower ownership and saving that 1,400? Where are you leaning?
Yeah, man. I love Gardner Minshew in this one. I think everyone's going to obviously try to get as much Stroud as they can, and then Gardner Minshew is going to be the second highest owned quarterback on the slate. I mean, there's only 4 of them, so I don't know, man. You're still going to have to find ways to get creatively different. You're going to have to play guys that you're uncomfortable playing with. If you're stacking with Gardner, right, you're probably going to run a tight end like Mo Alley Cox or some shit like that. May not be very fun, but look, I think you have to have a decent amount of exposure to him, especially considering that these are early projections, so I don't want to read too much into them, but right, you're only $500 more than Mason Rudolph, and you're projected for very similar output to CJ Stroud. I honestly think you might need to have more Minshew than Stroud, just based on kind of where he's coming in from a projection. But it's still really early on projections. I still like Stroud better.
Yeah, we got to take these projections that you're seeing with a grain of salt here. We haven't gotten an update from SaberSim without Lamar Jackson. We haven't really gotten a massive update yet for that. So just take that with a grain of salt. But look, we haven't talked about Mason Rudolph here. He's 5,400. This team has put up 30 points in 2 straight games. That would have been impossible during the Matt Canada regime. It feels like Mason is confident. This guy has gotten starts, dude. This guy's been on this team and been in this system for a while. So you got to assume that Mason Rudolph is going to come out. He's playing for a massive contract potentially next year, and he's also playing for a shot at maybe being the starter next year. I know that Pickett is probably going to be the guy, and the only reason why Pickett's not playing is because you got to ride that hot hand with Mason Rudolph. Look, let me just say this. This is do or die. If Mason Rudolph comes out and throws 2 picks in this game against a backup defense, Would you be surprised if Pickett showed up in the second half in a must-win game for the Steelers? I wouldn't. So I think Mason Rudolph to me is one of these guys you gotta get some exposure to because of the fact that he's probably going to be going up against some backups, and we've seen him do well. But I'm not convinced that if he has a rough game to start that he doesn't get benched in a massive game. Like, am I crazy to think that?
No, I don't think you're crazy. I don't know, man. Like Kenny Pickett's just really bad. Mitch Trubisky didn't do too much better. I think like just because of some of the I guess the high end output that we've seen from Mason Rudolph and George Pickens, right? And George Pickens looks like a different receiver, right? I think they might risk just riding him out for the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It just Pickett, like, he got hurt and he was looking good. Like, he was looking like the guy that they wanted him to look like. The only reason why Mason Rudolph is starting is because this team has put up a win streak with him. So, like, if the second that he looks bad, like, Steelers fans, comment down below what you think. But the second that he comes out and throws 2 picks or looks bad in this game, that's a weather game, and they're not, like, it doesn't look like they're going to win this game, I think maybe there's a chance you could see Pickett come in. That's just me. I'm trying to look around corners, as Brother Phil in the Discord says, and trying to find some weird edges here. I'm not going to play Pickett probably. Maybe one lineup I have him in like the Millie Maker or whatever. But it's worth just mentioning. All right, running back. So I'm sorting by projected points here. Jonathan Taylor is the most expensive dude. He's 7,400. He's projecting well. Devin Singletary at 6K. I like Devin Singletary in this game, dude. Going up against a heavy zone Indy defense where he could get some dump-off possibilities, but also, if they could establish the run in this game with Singletary, I know that they got Pierce there as well, but Singletary is clearly the guy, like a 60-40 or 70-30 type guy. If they could really establish the run with him and hold those linebackers for an extra second so they can pop up over him for some of these middle-of-the-field passes, I feel like I like Singletary in this game. I don't know what his ownership's going to be. He's coming in around 60% owned. That seems about right to me. But look, you got Najee Harris and Jalen Warren here. Najee Harris is 5,600. Jalen Warren's 5,400. I feel like every time we do one of these Steeler slates, we've done multiple 2 or 3 game slates with these Steelers teams. Dude, like, why are these guys priced so low? Like, especially in a massive weather game. We're going to want to get to at least one of these guys, I think. I know it's against Baltimore defense, but do we really know who's playing for Baltimore? You know what I'm saying? So in the snow, potentially, with heavy wind, I think you got to get to some Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. Let's talk about these guys first, these top-end dudes here. Thoughts on these Steelers running backs?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, man. I think you have to have a little bit of Najee or Jalen. I think Najee is going to be a little bit more popular than he normally would be, just because of his most recent performance. But like, I kind of like that. Hopefully, it softens a little bit of the ownership on Jalen Warren. I think I still kind of prefer him at a $200 discount. But all in all, like, I'm gonna be honest, man. Like, some of these kind of mid-price guys, like, I think I'm still leaning more towards Taylor or Devin Singletary, or I'm just gonna wait to see who's starting for Baltimore. Right? You got Melvin Gordon starting at 4,800. Like, I know you said you want to stay in the kind of high-price guys, but like, I might just blotch out the mids here for the most part if these guys are playing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, if Melvin Gordon, if we get reports saying he's starting, he's the dude, like, I'm gonna have a ton of him. Like, he's $4,800. This might turn into, if I think Melvin Gordon is the guy, this might turn into a 3 running backs type build potentially. We're not gonna have to worry about 2 tight end builds for this one, most likely. So wide receivers, running backs, getting him in the flex might be the situation we want to look at. Let's just look. Let me isolate Baltimore here, and let's look at the guys here. So Melvin Gordon most likely will get a majority of the run, and in a game where we think there's going to be weather, he's probably going to get 15 plus touches, you have to assume. And Justice Hill at 5,300, does he come out and get a drive? Or, like I said, they're going to have to play some of these guys. Like, does Jake Funk get elevated? And if Jake Funk is active, like, I think that maybe provides a little bit more insight. Do they play Gus Edwards for a drive and sit him down? Like, I don't think Gus Edwards, to me, is a guy that I'm going to play at all until we, if we get some sort of report saying that, all these starters are sitting and Gus Edwards won't even be active, then obviously we're going to have some more insight. But I think to me, it feels like maybe we just get some vagueness from Baltimore, and maybe some of these guys are active, but they just don't really get run. If there's any guy that I could see getting some run, is a guy like Justice Hill, maybe in the first half or something, but I'm more likely to just stick with Melvin Gordon. Any thoughts on these dudes? And if we see a guy elevated like Jake Funk or any of these dudes, are you interested in getting a one build with them at 4K, or would you rather just pay up $800 and just get Melvin Gordon, who we know is going to get run?
Yeah, man. So look, I think I'm going to start with Justice Hill and Gus Edwards. I think a minimum one of them is inactive for the game. I think it's a realistic shot that neither plays and both are inactive so that they can elevate another running back or two. Keaton Mitchell went down, J.K. Dobbins went down, and their ACLs in Baltimore are just fucking annihilated over the past 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you risk it. You have nothing to lose by losing this game. If Hill or Edwards is injured, you are screwed. Look, man, I don't want to overstate this, but I really don't think either play. I think at least one sits. That said, I think you get a guy like Jake Funk elevated. If you're playing 150, I think that he's a guy that you can consider. Otherwise, I'll probably stick to Melvin Gordon. And just to be a little transparent here, I primarily play 20 maxes. I'll throw some darts into the 150 mini max so that I can have a little bit of exposure there. But I'll prioritize mostly Melvin Gordon because I'm going to play mostly 20 maxes.
I mean, look, Dameon Pierce here at 4,700 is interesting. I'd probably rather play a guy like Melvin Gordon. Trey Sermon at 4,100, I don't think we're going to have to even touch or deal with because we got Moss back. Is there anybody else? What about Moss at 5K? Like, it seems, I'd rather get to Melvin Gordon than Moss because I just don't know what to expect from a guy like Moss. If he scores a touchdown in this game, I could see it happening on a screen pass or something. But most likely it's going to be a guy like Jonathan Taylor who gets involved. So are you interested in any random Zach Moss to try to help you get a little different in a game where everybody's going to be stacking?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, we saw Zach Moss get decent run with a couple weeks with JT still on the roster. So, look, this is exactly the slate. Zach Moss is going to be under 10% owned, and he's going to vulture 2 touchdowns, not do anything else. Like, this is what you're going to have to do. I think you can even try JT plus Zach Moss and Melvin Gordon. Be real fucking weird with it.
Let's go to wide receiver here. So Michael Pittman Jr., 7,500, Nico Collins, 7,600. These feel like the elite plays, and I feel like these guys are probably some of the only guys minus Stroud that I'm comfortable just jamming into a lot of lineups, especially if Noah Brown is out, or Robert Woods is out. I think just more of that volume goes to Nico. And Michael Pittman Jr., man, we were a little worried about him coming into this year with some injury stuff for best ball, but he's looked incredible this year. He's on a roll at this point. I know he didn't have the best game last week, but it would not surprise me if Michael Pittman Jr. is the highest scoring player on the slate. And similar with Nico Collins, man, they fed him last week. Houston did not look fantastic in that game against Tennessee. I mean, I know they held him to 3 points, and Stroud didn't really need to come out and throw the ball a million times. But Nico looked really good in that game, and he's looked good quite a bit this year. I think he have 1,100 yards this year? I mean, that's pretty damn impressive. So those guys are the top-end picks, obviously. But you got George Pickens, who we can't ignore, even though it's a weather game, and maybe we see a 17-mile-per-hour wind potentially in that one. All it takes is one little 10-yard slant route from Pickens. We saw it against the Bengals. Absolutely go off, and him and Mason Rudolph have been connecting. Thoughts on Pickens here? Let's talk about these higher-end dudes, and even guys like Josh Downs and Deontay Johnson. What are your thoughts on all these dudes? I think Michael Pittman and Nico Collins are absolute musts, at least one of these guys in all of your lineups.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it real simple. For you using optimizers, I will be building a rule that'll have either Nico or MPJ in all my lineups. Those are the 2 studs at wide receiver. Like, I'm not going to even risk it. I'll have as much of them as I can possibly get. And if that game goes off, they're just going to keep going back and forth to each other.
Yeah.
MPJ gets an insane amount of targets. Nico Collins is just insanely explosive.
Yeah.
And then look, I think the real kind of weird decision comes down to like, are we going to trust George Pickens again? I know we see that they've had a little bit of chemistry with him and Mason Rudolph, but like, I know you don't want to take away a chunk play, but you know that one chunk play changes a lot of his output for that one game. Now I know he ended up with some other stuff, and a lot of that's likely related to the confidence from the chunk play. But look, man, I think. I don't know. I with the weather, there are a lot of unknowns in this game. I don't know if 30-40% ownership is necessarily justified.
So let's talk about all these Houston wide receivers. Noah Brown questionable. Robert Woods at 3,800 questionable. If one of these guys that goes out, John Mechie's going to have some more opportunity. Xavier Hutchinson is going to have some more opportunity. Is there what's your strategy here if one or two of these guys doesn't play? It probably seems to me like this is a must win. Like these guys, if they are even 60%, they're going to be out there playing. You'd have to think. But what happens to our exposures for these Hutchinson and Mechie if one of these guys is out?
Look, man, I don't think you can hesitate to plug them in. Again, it's only a 2-game slate, and these guys, they're going to be under 15% owned. I mean, if Brown and or Woods is out, they're going to obviously increase in ownership, but their min price, like you're not going to get much more flexibility. The only other spot that you're going to be able to pay down less is going to be tight end, and I don't think we're going to have much better options over there. So, as far as pure punt plays go, it probably goes to the wide receivers of Houston if those two dudes are out.
So Josh Downs is interesting. We know what he's capable of. He had a big play on that opening drive last week. Alec Pierce had a huge play, 1 reception, 1 target, 53 yards and a touchdown. That's what Alec Pierce is, man. He's $4,300. You got to get some exposure to Alec Pierce because if he has one of these big plays, you're going to absolutely need him, especially at that price. But there's a good chance he puts up a 0. You just don't know with this guy. So that's something to mention. You had DJ Montgomery, who has had some success with Michael Pittman kind of going out of some of these games. I think you focus on Pittman, and then you get one of these other guys with your stacks, obviously, and potentially a tight end. Let's talk about Baltimore. We haven't really talked about these wide receivers for Baltimore. So, to me, this is pure guess, but this is basic. This is watching last week. Once that game got out of hand, we saw Nelson Aguilar as like the number 1. You saw Tylan Wallace in there, and then you saw at a certain point Nelson Aguilar even left when they brought in Huntley, and you saw Laquan Treadwell. Haven't heard of that name in a while, right? Since the Vikings years ago. But it seems like to me Nelson Aguilar. Where's my sound here?
We was catching him, unlike Aguilar.
Dude, I love Aguilar at this point, man. We know he can get involved in the end zone. We know that he can score touchdowns. And if he's the number 1 dude at 3,300, I don't care what the weather's like. I'm going to be interested in him. Even a guy like Tylan Wallace, Laquan Treadwell. Like, I think we have to wait to see who's inactive. I think for sure Zay Flowers is inactive. I don't see any reason to put an older Odell Beckham out there at all. Does Rashad Bateman get some run in the first quarter? I don't know. These guys are all dirt cheap. To me, Nelson Aguilar is probably one of my favorite value plays on the slate. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, man. He is probably the best value play on the slate. And again, like as we get more information about who the Ravens decide to run out for wide receiver, this opens up a lot more. Like Tylan Wallace, Laquan, just like you were saying. I am still of the mind. I don't even know if they play Rashad Bateman. Like he hasn't necessarily been an integral part of the offense this year, but at the same time, like I just don't know that the Ravens can afford to suffer any more injuries and actually make a playoff run.
Yeah.
You have nothing to lose. You will lose everything if you start losing players. I think they really just they're ultra safe come Saturday.
Well, dude, we saw Bradley Chubb in a meaningless end of the game rip his ACL and scream like right in front of the Ravens. Like that's a nice reminder to guess what? Do not put these guys out there. Especially the Ravens, man. The Ravens, I feel like, are so injury prone. I just don't think there's any reason to put Aguilar out there for a half or three quarters. If the game's at a hand, maybe you sit him, and then you just rely on some of these other guys here. There's no Devin Duvernay. So earlier in the year, we saw Huntley come in. I think that was week 9, and Duvernay was out there a lot. He's obviously on IR, so now we got to deal with Tylan Wallace, Laquan Treadwell, and any of these other guys they may choose to elevate. All right, let's move on here. Let's get to tight ends. So this is not a super appealing slate for tight ends. We've seen some of these 2-gamers and 3-gamers where you got George Kittle and Hawkinson, and you got some of these star tight ends. We're not really seeing that. Dalton Schultz is an important part of this Houston team. If he gets going, that's a huge deal for Houston. He's 4,200. I'm interested in him. A guy like Charlie Kolar, who caught a touchdown pass last week from Huntley in garbage time, he's going to be on the field a ton. Like, maybe we see a little bit of likely. I don't think he's going to be out there for more than a quarter. I'm just guessing. But Kolar will be out there the whole damn game. He's 2,500. He's min priced. I'm adjusting his projection, just guessing at this point. If he got you 7.5 fantasy points, that's huge. I don't know that he can do that, but they're gonna have to throw the ball to somebody. Pat Freiermuth put up a goose egg 2 weeks ago when everybody against the Bengals, when everybody and their brother was playing him, because the Bengals are one of the worst teams against tight ends. Last week, I think he had like 4 receptions for 44 yards or something to that effect. He's 3,600. You got to be interested in him. These Colts tight ends, who knows who actually goes off? Granson got some targets. Mallory got some targets. Mo Ali Cox got some targets. I think they had 7 targets between all their tight ends, which is nothing really to write home about. But for a team that we typically don't think of as having a very good tight end room, maybe getting to one of these guys like Will Mallory at 2,500 could be an interesting little pivot over Charlie Kolar. What are we doing with these tight ends, man? Brevin Jordan at 2,500 scored last week. That's another interesting play. I think you get one tight end. Make sure, it's probably not worth getting to 2 tight ends on this slate. It's really not. And you probably just rotate a lot. Like, to me, there's not one guy that really jumps out to me as being like a must play. Probably Dalton Schultz is that guy, but he's going to be 50% owned. And could Dalton Schultz come out and get 5 fantasy points in this game? Yeah, he could. He could also get 15. So thoughts on these tight ends here, man? There's nothing really super appealing, right?
Yeah, no, nothing crazy. I think you kind of just prioritize Dalton Schultz and then Pat Freiermuth. And then obviously, assuming likely doesn't play, Charlie Kolar becomes a really valuable play. I think you can sprinkle in guys like Kylan Granson, played him a little bit this year with Gardner Minshew in the Colts offense. Again, like, you're not really risking all that much, especially when they're under that $3K price tag, because you're still saving against a potential punt at the wide receiver spot. Now, all that said, I'm kind of curious just to see what kind of flexibility Nelson Aguilar gives us in the first place, because that's really where I'm going to be starting to save money. If I can get to Dalton Schultz or Pat Freiermuth, I think I would prefer that. But if you need to double punt, then I think Aguilar plus Kolar is probably the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, one way to get different is to play a 2 tight end lineup. I just don't think it's necessary. But if a guy like Charlie Kolar can get you 7, 8, 9 fantasy points, his cost and being able to jam in as many of these dudes from this second night game here, that maybe could be worth it. We've seen weird shit happen on 2 gamers where you have a high owned guy get 7, 8 fantasy points and still make the optimal when he's projected for a lot more. So it's something to think about. I don't think I'm going to do it, but you could get a little different by playing 2 tight ends. I just don't think it's necessary on this slate. Defenses. Feels like to me we got to target defenses from this first game. I know that Indy can put some pressure on the quarterback and get some sacks. I know that Houston had a sack 6 last week. Like, they can get involved. They have a pretty young, interesting, pretty good defense overall. But it feels like to me in a massive weather game, it's probably best to target either the Steelers or the Ravens. Now, you're looking at the Steelers going up against Tyler Huntley. That's probably the most ideal matchup on paper, and they're probably going to be the highest owned. Are you keying in on one defense or one game and kind of going heavy on these defenses, or are you going to spread yourself out quite a bit just in case we see a random pick 6 or a punt return touchdown or something like that.
I don't know if I'm necessarily going to spread myself out. I'm going to have a little bit of exposure to the Texans and Colts for sure, but I think I'll just be prioritizing the first game, Steelers Ravens. Like um, I know I generally don't like chalky defenses, but the Steelers are just in a good spot here. They're not priced like they're playing against a bunch of backups, and it's a must-win game for them. So yeah, man, I think you can kind of get a balanced exposure. I talked about it earlier. The Colts have a total of 5 defensive touchdowns on the season, so that is something worth considering. But they do give up a shitload of points. They need a touchdown to win or to be in the optimal.
All right, let's look at value here. So obviously, I'm adjusting projections a bit. Kolar jumps out as kind of a decent value play. Could put up 0 though. That's the worry with him. To me, a guy like Nelson Aguilar, if we think he's the guy that could get most of the reps, they're gonna have they just don't have enough wide receivers on this roster. Like maybe you see Cunningham come out, but and get some reps. Not that it really affects us for a classic slate. But to me, Nelson Aguilar feels like a guy at 3,300 I could be relatively comfortable playing, at least a half or 3/4. But most likely you're going to see him in for a lot of the game. That's just my opinion. I could be completely wrong. Who else jumps out to you as good value here, dude? Like Stroud is obviously popping up as a great play at 7,300. Even he's the most expensive dude. But Minshew at 5,900, good value. He's gonna be slightly lower owned. Who else jumps out to you, dude? And also Steelers running backs, pretty damn good value.
Yeah, I mean Steelers running backs. We talked about it, right? For non-obvious stuff, if Houston sits any of their wide receivers due to injury, we'll open up some other guys. But right now, like, Gardner Minshew, I think I don't want to come back to him, but like I do like him, just the discount that you're getting, and he's getting a similar projection. But again, as we get closer to the slate and we get more news about Baltimore, we could see some of these adjustments from a projection standpoint. Outside of that, Nelson Aguilar is probably going to be my favorite value play on the slate. 3,300. We were playing him when he wasn't necessarily the only wide receiver, and he's had touchdowns. So
yeah,
he's catching the ball. He just can't catch from Carson Wentz.
All right, let's look at our lineup builds here. So throw us a like, guys. We appreciate all the support. Our videos lately have been getting a ton of views from you guys, so thank you so much. Let's get to 100 likes on this video, and also be sure to join that Discord. I know we've talked about that. That's free. As well as if you want to help support the channel and you want to get a showdown show every week, as well as you get a private Discord if you join our YouTube membership, which is down below. Hit the join button, only $3.99 a month. And as we move into UFL now, we're going to transition into a lot of content for that, and we'll be giving you guys very specific content on that, as well as helping you build some lineups in that private channel. All right, let's look at some builds here. So we want to start out with our single entry. So Ellie, you and I have, as the season has gone on, I started out the season, entering those $50 or $100 single entries, and those are nice, don't get me wrong, but lately I've been going a lot heavier on basically every single $15, every $5, every $3, every single $12 single entry I can get my hands on, and kind of diversifying a little bit in my single entries. What's your strategy here this week? Are you continuing to go down that route and basically letting SaberSim help you with your single entries and then putting your own flavor into the GPPs? Is that kind of how you're rolling?
Yeah, for the most part, do a couple single entries and kind of let SaberSim help me there, and then just get a little bit more crazy when it comes to GPP, because you guys know I'm comfortable playing random motherfuckers when it comes to these GPP slates.
Absolutely. All right, let's build a single entry by hand. Let's go Stroud. Let's go Nico. Let's go Pittman to start. This is going to be very popular. Let's just say that. But for single entries, I'm obviously okay with doing that. Let's look at the running backs now. We got to get Jonathan Taylor in here. We probably got to get a Pittsburgh running back in here, right? So you want to just jam both of those in now? You want to go to Warren?
Yeah, go Warren, and then honestly, just put in Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, you're right. I think right now it's leaning that Melvin Gordon's going to be the guy. Let's get him involved. He's pretty cheap, so we got a 3 running back build here. So wide receivers. Do you want to just go ahead and plug in Aguilar here as a placeholder for value? Obviously, if we hear other reports that maybe he doesn't get all the run, or maybe he's not even active. I mean, it's possible. I doubt it, but for now, let's put Aguilar in here, right?
Yep.
So for tight ends, do you want to go Kolar, or do you want to be safer and get a guy like Schultz or Freiermuth?
I mean, we have a shitload of salary, so I mean, just throw in Schultz and see where we're at.
We don't really have a shitload of salary, actually. We're going to need at least 3K here probably to get one of these defenses we're comfortable with. So maybe we're going to have to go with Kolar or one of these Colts dudes. Maybe for now, let's go Kolar.
Yeah.
I don't think we can get to really anybody else. You can go Granson here. I'm not playing Kylan Granson in my single entries. I'm sorry. So I'd rather go with value, 2,500. Then that really opens us up for anything. Probably Steelers defense here, since they're going to be the highest owned. You could mix it up. But what we're seeing here is a Stroud, Taylor, Warren, Nico Collins, Pittman Jr., Nelson Aguilar, Kolar, Gordon, and Steelers. Now, this feels like maybe we have too much Baltimore here. Let's make an adjustment. Like Aguilar and Gordon. Is that too much? Like, and Kolar. Like, I don't know that we in this particular lineup we can get away from 2 of them. But who would you switch out here? Would you switch out the tight end and maybe go with somebody else? We could get to Freiermuth.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get to Freiermuth, I think that's fine.
All right, so this is kind of a halfway decent placeholder. We're waiting on a lot of news, so we got to kind of keep that in mind here. But I don't hate this. I feel like a majority of all single entries and just tournament lineups in general are going to start out with Stroud, Collins, Pittman, and probably a guy like Taylor or Warren. Like, this is probably a pretty popular build, but introducing a guy like Aguilar is kind of a fun way to switch things up a little bit. All right, let's go to some GPP builds. So let's try to find ways to get different with Stroud. So let's put Stroud in. I still think for tournaments, Collins and Pittman, it's a 2-game slate, dude. Like, we can't avoid some of these guys. Like, could you not play one of them? Yeah, absolutely. I just feel like I'm going to have a minimum of one. But let's start out with this, because this is a lot of salary that we're taking up here. Where do we go for running back? What are some other, like, just general roster constructions? Do you want to just go, like, super heavy stacks on this game, just jam in everybody, and then get the defense and maybe one guy from the Ravens or the Steelers?
Yeah, man. Like, I think you can, get a little bit weird here. I mean, throw in Devin Singletary.
Yeah.
I think that's a good GPP play.
Yep.
I think maybe you consider fading Jonathan Taylor, and this might be crazy as hell, but throw in Zach Moss. Like, I don't think this is a bad lineup for him. And it's going to be tough having 2 running backs from the same game, but this game is going to be the highest paced out of the 2.
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to grab another wide receiver from this game? Like, you want to just go ahead and grab our defense and maybe one guy from this first game? You want to get Ravens defense even here for a GPP play?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's get Melvin Gordon, dude. Now, I would switch this out. Obviously, I'd switch my flex to a later play here. So let's put Gordon in the running back spot, and let's put Moss. I know that Moss might not get much run, but these are GPP builds, man. We're hoping that a guy like Moss maybe gets a random touchdown and a couple targets. So we got 8,500 for 2 spots. We know that we're going to be okay with tight end as far as if we need to pay down. But is this a situation where we go like with one of these tight ends, like even like a guy like Mallory or Mo Alley Cox, or is this a Schultz situation?
I mean, yeah, we can try and go in with one of the cheaper guys. I think Mo Alley Cox would probably be the way to go.
You can go Brevin Jordan too. Let's go Brevin Jordan. Let's just try it. You could pretty much put anybody in here. Since we got a Stroud stack, now let's get another Indy guy. Let's get another Indy wide receiver here. We could get anybody we want almost. Actually, we can. You want to go down to Pierce or Downs?
Probably Downs. Pierce hasn't exactly materialized yet this season.
So we've got Gordon and Ravens defense, and then we stacked the absolute shit out of this Houston game. It feels a little uncomfortable. Like we're missing Pickens, we're missing a running back from the Steelers. That does feel uncomfortable to me, but this is kind of what we're going to have to do on a 2-game slate is massively just stack the shit out of one of these games potentially because, there's a chance that first game ends up 17-10 and some random practice squad guy gets a touchdown and just messes everything up. I feel more confident in stacking this Houston game. But in saying that, we'll do a Minshew stack, but let's get to. You want to do Rudolph?
Yeah, let's do Mason.
All right, if we're doing Mason, we're doing Pickens. Can we? I know the answer to this, but we can absolutely put a Najee Harris stack together here, capturing a lot of this offense potentially. Would you ever do like a double Najee Harris Warren lineup for this particular build?
Not on a larger slate, but on a slate like this, that's absolutely viable. I mean, Warren gets involved in the pass game more, and then if Harris gets the goal line touchdowns, it actually could work out.
All right, so if we're doing that, let's go ahead and just grab all our studs from this other game and try to get this involved. We got 4 Pittsburgh Steelers, assuming they put up a decent amount. Like, we have to assume when we're building these lineups that we're right 100%. And if this is the case, let's try to get to a little bit of this other game here, obviously. Where do we go? Do we want to get Aguilar as a run back? We probably should.
Yeah, throw in Aguilar. That's fine.
Or Gordon, but I don't want to get... I mean, look, we can get 3 running backs from the same game if it's going to be a snow game, potentially, but let's put Aguilar in to start. You could go down to Tylan Wallace or whatever, but I'm going to put Aguilar in here. And I'd switch that out. Let's put Aguilar in the wide receiver spot. Let's keep that flex open for the night game with Pittman. Now we got plenty of salary here for tight end and defense. We might need to make some adjustments, or we can just leave some money on the table. Do you want to go Schultz? Do you want to go Freiermuth? Is that Freiermuth too much?
Yeah, throw in Schultz. Let's just see what we have.
We can get whatever we
We
want.
still have a lot of money.
So, we can leave a little bit on the table here and get Texans or Colts defense, or we can just go right to Steelers if you wanted to go that route. Where would you come up? I don't know that you need to leave a ton of money on the table, especially if we're building a massive Pittsburgh-Baltimore stack, I don't think we need to leave money on the table. Maybe we come up from Aguilar. Let's put Steelers defense in there. Maybe we come up from Aguilar. We can get to Noah Brown. We can get to Josh Downs, Johnson, Pierce, any of these guys.
Probably just go like Noah Brown or Josh Downs in this situation. Go to the other game.
Yeah. So, this is a weird build. Like, I don't know how many of these I'm getting to. Like, I'd probably be more likely to pull out like Najee Harris or something and put it, maybe a Jonathan Taylor and pay down a little bit in that last spot. But I don't think there's any limits to kind of how weird we can get on a 2-gamer like this, where one game potentially is a complete question mark and the other game is a massive total. All right, let's do Minshew, right? So where are we going here? You want to jam in like 3 pass catchers, or you want to get Jonathan Taylor in this stack? What are you thinking for builds?
Look, let's be weird again. Let's fade Jonathan Taylor. Let's go Singletary. Let's go Zach Moss. Let's go Nico Collins, and then
Pittman,
and then Downs.
Dude, we got ton. I mean, with Minshew at quarterback, dude, like there's so much more flexibility with salary. It's crazy. Let's look at who you going with tight end.
Can we do? So here, tight end, throw in Pat Freiermuth, and then let's throw in Steelers defense, and then just see what we have at flex.
Basically, whoever we want. Pickens, you could go Pickens as a one-off here. Freiermuth and Pickens. You could come down off of Freiermuth and go, stack this game even more with Granson or something.
Go to Kolar.
Kolar.
What does that give us for Pickens? Oh, we can't quite get to Taylor.
We can't quite get to Taylor, but maybe we can make an adjustment here. Can we go down from Downs, or maybe pull Zach Moss out of here and go with Warren? No, that's going to be even worse.
Just throw in Taylor for Zach Moss, and let's see what we have.
It's going to be probably Melvin Gordon here. So you've got Minshew, Singletary, Jonathan Taylor, Nico Collins, Pittman, Downs, Kolar, Gordon, and Steelers defense. I don't know, man. Like, there's infinite possibilities. I'm going to try to get to as many possible lineups that my bankroll will allow for. What'd you learn, dude? It feels like a pretty fun one to build for, especially hand building. Shit seems like pretty fun.
What I learned is I'm probably going to end up playing a lot more Showdown than I anticipated for that Baltimore game.
Yeah.
There's just so many unknowns there that I think you can just be weird and have an opportunity to make some money. And, just to keep echoing that sentiment that we've been saying the whole show, hop in the Discord. We're going to be chopping it up in there. And as soon as we have actives and actives, we'll update you on kind of our strategies from there. It seriously matters for what's going to happen with the Ravens on Saturday.
What's your lean on Texans versus Colts here? Do you think this is a Texans win? That's where I'm leaning. Any chance the Colts come out and do something?
Yeah, I think Texans probably win 31-21. It should be a fairly convincing win, I think.
What else did you learn about building? Like, anything jump out to you about things that you don't want to do? I think that on this slate, man, with all the unknowns that go into that Ravens team, I'm going to make sure that I have like pods of lineups where I don't have any exposure to Ravens, maybe even, and then I'll have some builds where I go heavy Ravens just in case if they come out, and same with Steelers. But I think generally speaking, we're going to want to get 2, 3, 4 guys from this Texans-Colts game, even if we're stacking that first game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the easiest way to do this. Is I think people are going to think that you get different by taking by overstacking the first game and maybe taking pieces from the second. Maybe you just overstack the shit out of the second game. It's clearly a higher total.
Yeah,
it's a better game environment. Both wherever they'd play, if it was Indy or Houston, it'd be in a dome, right? So like I think that matters for a potential playoff maker, right? Whichever wins makes playoffs.
Throw us a like on the way out. Let's get to 100 likes. Our goal is to get to 2,000 subs by the end of this football season. We appreciate you guys. We will be recording that YouTube members video either tonight or tomorrow morning and get that out to you guys for that Texans versus Colts showdown slate. And then obviously we have that Sunday night game that should be a real good game. We'll see you guys later.